Hi all, happy Friday. So we're at the end of another week of online learning, and after this weekend we only have 2 more weeks of school before the summer. So hope you guys are excited. We're almost there. You guys have been doing such an amazing job keeping up with all the online learning that's been going on, and it's just this whole different chaotic situation. So thank you guys so much for your continued hard work. You guys are so close. You're almost there. And we're almost at that finish line. So today, we're going to start off with our review, as usual. And we are actually going into decimal names. All right, so we are going to learn about how to write out these decimals in word format, as in, you know how you write out 67 as like 67. We're going to do that with decimals. All right, and the rules for decimals are a little bit different. So we're going to go into that next. First of all, let's do our review. So we have 6.7 minus 1.88. So to do this, you guys remember, take your first number, write it out, and then put your minus symbol. You need to line up your decimals with one another, first and foremost. So I have to make sure this 1.88, that decimal, is lined up with this right here. So I put 1, I line up that decimal, 0.88. Now, when solving this problem, with my blank spot, I'm allowed to put a 0 in that place as a placeholder because it doesn't change the number, it doesn't change the, how the problem works. It's just a little bit easier than doing blank minus 8 versus 0 minus 8. All right, so now I have my decimals lined up. What I can do is I put my decimal down here ahead of time so it's out of the way and I don't have to worry about it. Now I can solve this problem. So 0 minus 8, I can't do that, so I have to borrow from my 7. This becomes a 6, this becomes a 10. So now I have 10 minus 8, that equals 2. Now I have 6 minus 8, I can't do that, so I have to borrow from my decimal, or from my number here. This becomes a 5, this becomes 16. 16 minus 8 equals 8. What is on the right of the decimal stays to the right. What's on the left stays to the left. So now I move on to my left side. I have 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4. So my final answer is 4.82. Now this problem right here, I have a whole number plus a decimal. So you guys remember, if you have a whole number, there is an invisible decimal point and 0, 0 after it. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put 3.00 plus 7, and I have to line up those decimals, 7.67. All right, so I make sure that my whole numbers are lined up with one another, my decimals are lined up with one another. And then afterwards, if I have just a whole number with blanks, I'm allowed to put zeros in that place. All right, my decimals are lined up. I put 1 down here ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I do 0 plus 7, that equals 7. 0 plus 6, that equals 6. 3 plus 7, that equals 10. My final answer is 10.67. Okay? So you guys did an absolutely awesome job with that. I was looking at the work that was handed in, and you guys are absolutely rocking it, doing an amazing job with decimals. All right, today we are going into the proper names of decimals. So as you guys may remember, you have learned in the past that let's say you have the number 167. This first number here is your ones column. This one here is your tenths, or your tens column. And this one here is your hundred column. With decimals, things are a little bit backwards. The reason being is because when you have your decimal, the number that's to the left of the decimal spot is your ones column, like it is here. What's after this is considered to be part of a 1. So it's not, as you guys remember with fractions, it's not a whole number, it's basically a fraction of a whole number. All right, so what we're doing today is we're learning how to write out the names of the decimal, how, if we're given the name of a decimal, how to write it out in number format, and then, if you guys remember, doing fractions. So I will show you what we mean. This first column here is called our ones, just like this one is our ones. All right. Now we have our decimal spot. Now we look at what's after this decimal. The first number after the decimal is called the tenths. All right, and the one after this is called the hundredths. So if I was writing out this number in word format, I would call it 1 and 6/10, because there's a 6 and that's in the tenths column, and 7/100ths. Whoops. And 7/100ths. Okay? Today, we're not going to deal too much with the hundredths. We're going to be mostly dealing with the ones and the tenths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out in Word, in written out format, a decimal, and we need to figure out what that number is. Okay? So we have 1 and 7, oops, I'm just going to, and 7/10. Okay? If we were putting this into a decimal number form, we first look at our first number here is 1. So I write down 1. This and here basically means decimal. Okay? And then we are left with 7/10. Now, as you remember from our last slide, this tenths column is the one that's right after the decimal. So when looking at this written form, 7 tells us the number 7, and the tenths tells us which position it's in, which is right after the decimal. Okay, so our tenths is right after the decimal. Hundredths is the one that's after this one here, but we're not dealing with the hundredths, so we don't have to worry too much about that today. So 1 and 7/10 written out into a decimal is 1.7, or 1.7. Now comes the third part. So we have our word, or written, our number. Now we have one last portion. This is a fraction. So you guys remember having fractions. We have our mixed fractions. We have 1 and 7/10. What this means is if I was to write this out into a word problem, it would be 1 whole, or 1, and 7/10. Huh. That sounds similar to what's written here. Okay? What a decimal is it's basically a mixed number, or a mixed fraction. So remember our mixed fractions where we had 2 wholes and 3/10? That is 2 and 3/10. So 2 and 3/10, or 3 parts of 10. That means, that's basically saying here that this decimal, that's what's after this decimal, is part of a whole. Okay, so if I was going to put this into fraction format, it is 1 and 7 over 10. All right, we're going to try a couple more examples. 9 and 6 tenths. To put this into number format, first of all, I look at my first word here, which is 9. So that's the number 9. And, which means decimal. 6 tenths. So 6 tenths is our first column. I need the 6. 9.6. If I'm writing it into a fraction, it is 9 wholes and 6 over 10. As you will notice with these decimals, these last couple words here, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 3 tenths, 1 tenth, you're putting it over 10 all the time. You're just figuring out what that top number is. So it's always going to be over that number 10, as you can remember with fractions. You're just trying to figure out what that top number is, which is this first section right here. And it's going to tell you 6, 7, 3, 4, 5 tenths, whatever that is. All right, so that's how we can put our word problem into a number and a fraction form. Let's try one more. This one's going to be a little bit different. 3 tenths. What's different about this one? We don't have this first section, meaning this decimal does not have a whole number in front of it. Meaning that whole number, if nothing is written there, that means it's 0. 0 and 3 tenths. It means 0.3. Or, even simpler, 0.3 or decimal 3. What that means is we don't have a whole number, we just have a part of a whole, as in just that little decimal. So we can either write it as 0.3 or 0.3. I will accept either option. Technically 0.3 is more proper. So I'm just going to keep it as 0.3. How do I remember that it's 0? Because it's not written as 0 and 3 tenths. If there's nothing written there and it just says 3 tenths or 4 tenths or 5 tenths or 8 tenths, if there's nothing written there, it just means 0. So we have 0.3. How do I put that as a fraction? So I could just do this. 0 is my whole number. And then I have, does this look right? No, because you can't have a whole number there as a 0. So if I'm writing into a fraction format, I just omit the 0 or leave out the 0 and just write a fraction on its own. Okay, because I don't have a whole number there. I only have part of a whole. Okay, so what you guys have for today is basically a sheet where you are given the word. The word's are already given to you, so it's already written out for you. You are writing it in number format, and then you are writing it out in fraction format, similar to how we did it here. Okay, so remember, your fraction is always going to be over 10. What you're doing is you're just looking at that second part of the problem to figuring out what that fraction is. Your first part here, 1 and, means your whole number. That's beside the fraction. If there's nothing there, it's a 0. And that's it. So I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Be sure to email me if you have any questions whatsoever. And otherwise, I will see you guys on Monday.